Welcome, friends. We're joining in a somber service. It's a little different to most services that we'll do. Throughout the day, we're going to sit with Jesus and reflect on everything he experienced. Good Friday, 2,000 years ago. We're going to begin with a couple of readings and then just move into some thoughts on the crucifixion. The service is designed to help us contemplate. It's not supposed to be clever. It's not supposed to be mind-blowing. It's simply we sit and we contemplate with Jesus who loves us. So we begin with Psalm 22. My God, why have you forsaken me? Why are you so far from saving me? So far from my cries of anguish. My God, I cry out by day, but you do not answer. By night, but I find no rest. Yet you are enthroned as the Holy One. You are the Holy One Israel praises. In you our ancestors put their trust. They trusted and you delivered them. To you they cried out and were saved. In you they trusted and were not put to shame. But I am a worm and not a man, scorned by everyone, despised by the people. All who see me mock me. They hurl insults, shaking their heads. He trusts in the Lord, they say. Let the Lord rescue him. Let him deliver him, since he delights in him. Matthew 27. As they were going out, they met a man from Cyrene named Simon, and they forced him to carry the cross. They came to a place called Golgotha. There they offered Jesus wine to drink, mixed with gall. But after tasting it, he refused to drink it. When they had crucified him, they divided up their clothes by casting lots. And sitting down, they kept watch over him there. Every single one of the writers of Jesus' crucifixion skips over what you might call gory details. The moment of crucifixion is a moment and then gone. We sit for a while around the cross, but there's no over-the-top descriptions. There's no long discourses on what exactly was happening. Have you ever wondered why? I wonder if it was just because the idea of the cross was so ever-present in the minds of people there. To us, it's this thing that was done a long time ago. But to them, it was this thing that happened so regularly. The Romans had crucified thousands of Jewish people as they'd taken over the area known as Palestine. The cross was a constant present. 2 other people were crucified the day Jesus died. Tells us that this to them was normal. To the Romans, it was a task. Crucifixion was designed to be easy and to have maximum pain. It was designed to stretch out death, but the actual process of crucifying someone was remarkably quick, almost as quick as the description that we read. They crucified him there. And then it moves on. There was a saying in Rome, even the thought of the cross be far from a Roman citizen. The whole process was so awful that Romans refused to talk about it, refused to accept that it was something that could ever happen to a Roman citizen. Roman citizens were given quick, easy deaths, like beheading. Crucifixion was reserved for the worst of the worst, reserved for non-Romans, for people like Jesus that were suspected of being leading a rebellion. Just a few words, and we're into 6 hours that Jesus' death by crucifixion took 2,000 years ago. And we as his followers sit and stand, much like his first followers would have done. And we realize the awfulness of what we're viewing. We get to sit this side of Easter. We're people of resurrection. And so it's so easy for us to bypass the idea of the cross. But for just these moments, at 9, at 12, and at 3, we're going to sit with our Jesus who loves us and experience a little of what he's experiencing. This service is going to be a little different in some other ways. We're going to use a little more liturgy, a little more formal prayers, because those things help us process at times like this. So we're going to head into our first thoughts. As Jesus begins his journey to the cross, he's already tired. Already, he's been beaten. He's been up all night. He's been walked through mock trial after mock trial. And after a long, hard walk, he arrives at the crucifixion spot. The open, bleeding wounds have sweat pouring into them and sting. The feel of the wood stings. The lashing of the crowd stings. Jesus is there for all to see, broken, beaten down. And then there's the moment of crucifixion itself. In those moments, he's placed on a cross and his hands are nailed to the woodwork. Have you ever thought about what that means or what that looked like? Think about those hands for a second. Those are his Father's hands. Those are not the hands of a man. Those are hands of God. But they're also human hands. The musician Sting tells this incredibly emotional story about sitting with his dad in hospital in the last moments. And he talks about how in those moments he looks down and he sees his father's hands. And as they sit there with almost nothing to say in that moment, that sacred moment, he says, Dad, your hands are the same as mine. And his dad looks at him and says, yes, son, they are. But you've used your hands better than I've used mine. Sting talks about the emotion of that moment. Talks about how in that moment it's the first time that his dad has ever said anything positive about what he does. Ever acknowledged that he had any kind of talent, ever acknowledged that his achievements were worth something. And it all begins with that moment of those hands are the same as mine. Jesus' hands are his Father's hands. They did incredible things on earth. These are the hands that stopped waves, that when he spoke, he lifted up his hand, the waves stopped moving, the storm stopped. These are the hands that healed a blind man. These are the hands that touched the face of a leper when no one else would touch them. These are the hands that lifted a prostitute from the ground when she was being stoned by men all around her. These are the hands that did these incredible things. Couldn't these hands of in this moment stop the nails? We know that on Maundy Thursday, just the night before, Jesus has wrestled with this moment of, oh, Father, your will or my will? What do I do? And he finally ends with this incredible prayer, not my will, but your will be done. Was he tempted in this moment again to say, what about my will? Those hands could have stopped those nails, and they don't. Jesus' hands aren't just the hands of his Father, they're human hands too. Imagine those hands of a carpenter. They say that hands are the biggest thing that ages you. You can tell someone's age most particularly by looking at their hands. They don't hide anything. They get weather-torn, they get beaten up, they get used. And Jesus' hands must have been used over and over again. He knew what it took to swing a hammer hard enough to put a nail through a piece of wood. And so we sit with him and we imagine that moment where he watches those nails driven into his own hands. As a carpenter, he knew what it took. As God, he knew what it meant. The cross itself, this thing that we watch Jesus nail to, is this simple structure. It's two beams, one upright, one horizontal. The writer Max Lucado talks about how he sees a beauty in this design, beauty in this horrible instrument of crucifixion. The first piece of wood, it stands upright like God's holiness. God is holy, he's perfect. And the second one stretches out like God's love, which is wide and vast. How does God choose between his holiness and his love? Through the cross, he doesn't have to. That's the incredible news of it. In that moment, Jesus stretches out his hands and has them nailed in the position of embrace. So you and I would know that we are loved. Simply know that we are loved. You are loved by the God of the universe, this God that was sitting with at the foot of a cross. He died loving you. We're going to move on tomorrow or Sunday to all the joy of resurrection, but at this moment we're sitting with Jesus. Jesus said this, "And I, when I am lifted up from the cross, will draw all people to myself." To his followers, these words of Jesus from the Gospel of John speak of the power of the cross to contain and unfold all the horror, pain, and grief of the world in God's uncompromising and enduring embrace of love. The cross is not merely our redemption, but also our reconciliation and restoration to God and to one another. You are loved. Jesus, we sit at the foot of your cross and we're contemplating. We're thinking of all that you've done and all that you mean. We trust your offer of embrace. We know that we are loved.
The Prince of Glory died, my richest gain I count but lost, and pour content on all my pride. See from his head, his hands, his feet, sorrow and love flowed mingled down. Did e'er such love and sorrow meet, or thorns compose so rich a crown? Oh, the wonderful cross! Oh, the wonderful cross bids me come and die, and find that I may truly live. Oh, the wonderful cross! Oh, the wonderful cross! All who gather near by grace draw near and bless your name. O'er the whole realm of nature mine, that were an offering far too small. Love so amazing, so divine, demands my soul, my life, my all. Oh, the wonderful cross! Oh, the wonderful cross bids me come and die, and find that so amazing, so